Welcome back. This is part two of an interview with Joyce. If you haven't heard the last episode, please start there. Let's get right into it.
And to the point about like getting people during a bear market. Um, Honestly, I think the people that have been joining are kind of self-selecting. Like Daniel, for example, I think he's probably been thinking about it. Obviously, he told me that originally he was of that same mindset, right? The Instagram mindset where it's just like NFT is bad. But I think he opened up his mind and then saw what you were doing and then kind of self-selected. I think there are people that are curious. And I would say to the people that are curious but are concerned about the bear market, now is exactly the time. There's less competition overall, and and if you do, if you are able to kind of create your own unique style and community, you can do things like what Joyce has done with her most recent auction, the critters. Can we talk about critters for a second?
Sure.
So first off, congrats on that auction, right? The critters are, if you don't know, they're going to be a collection of 99 little doodles, um,
Mm-hmm.
a little cute little characters that have a lot of personality and style. And well, actually not well 99, yes. So there's gonna be seven. Can you go over the formula? It's 77 critters and 22 potions.
Yeah, you got it.
And the first drop that you did, well, actually the first drop was raffle. Um,
Uh-huh.
right? Those were raffled off. I tried putting an offer on one of them, but it wasn't accepted, unfortunately. But the second drop that you did literally a few days ago, I think almost every single one went 30 soul plus, like average.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
even at today's USD rates for soul, that's like $900 to $1,000 per
Yeah.
critter per crotter.
Per Crowder. Yeah, honestly, I was still processing it. Like I couldn't believe it. These are just like so the critters
Are
um
those are the critters the things you drew on the sides of your textbooks? Let's be honest. Be honest.
uh something very similar to them. Just like silly things that let my brain take a break and still have fun at the same time, you know? And the critter, as you've come to know, like on my PFP, that OG critter, the very first one, actually came from okay. Um, I need I need a profile picture for Twitter, but I don't know what to. So I just 30 seconds random drew a cat with a stick. And that's been my PFP for a while.
On Discord, at least. Yep.
Yeah, and Twitter.
Well, Twitter, I know you've been repping. Shout out to Lawrence, Masked Warrior. You've been
Oh
repping
yeah,
the
yeah,
mask for a little bit.
yeah. Shout out to Lawrence, Mask Warrior, awesome. You should get one. Um,
Yeah, but the
well,
critters, right? They're just these little characters. Um, I guess you started making. I mean, you've been making them. It sounds like
mm-hmm.
for a long time, but officially you created it as part of Twitter. Uh,
Yeah.
they are actually your Web3 brand in a way.
Oh, yeah.
And on kind of all the art you've done, you've placed them around, whether or not people notice them. These little animal things, they're kind of Easter
Mm-hmm.
eggs. Um, do you want have you put any that people haven't found? Just as a question.
Mm, I don't know. I don't know if people find them or not. Um, but I think that people who are familiar with the critters like know to find like spot them right away. So yeah, I don't know.
Um, do you know what your do you have inspiration for them now that you're making a kind of full collection of them?
Yeah, a lot of them I just take inspiration from the daily small things that I find joy in. So there's one that just eats a toast. I really I really like crunchy toast. Like I like to toast my toast to the point before it burns so it's extra crunchy like a cracker.
Oh, so you get cancer? Okay.
No, it's not black yet.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, but yeah, for example, there's just a critter eating a toast and it's really crunchy and it's really happy and it's dancing. And there's like another critter that's just listening to music and dancing. And there's like the bee one that's just silly, flying, not how usually a bee would fly and the legs dangling. So I guess for them in general, they come from like a place of spontaneity and just joy
Okay,
and
but spoilers.
enjoying life.
There's one that's stabbing a tomato. What is what is that about?
That have you heard of cute aggression?
Yes, after you told me about it before.
But you don't experience it.
Not at well. With my kid, maybe.
Okay.
So can you describe what cute aggression is first?
Yes. So for me, basically, when I see a really cute thing, especially if it's like really round, perfectly round or shiny, you just want to squeeze it.
And you want to like squeeze it really hard until it dies.
But then you know you can't because you don't want to kill it. So you just like you tense your entire body and clench your teeth just to stop yourself from smushing it. Does that make sense? Because it's so cute, you want to smush it.
No comment. Okay, let's talk about Tablelands. No,
Wait,
I get it. I got it.
Are you gonna cut? Maybe that part should be left out.
No, I'm gonna leave it, and I'm gonna I'm gonna dial the voice changer to like demonic
No.
overtone.
No.
I'm gonna do that just for fun. Okay, let's talk about Tablelands.
For sure.
Okay, so that's a project that the Oddfellows, obviously the creative studio that you work at, recently released, right? The project itself. It's doing really well. What was the work that you did on the Tablelands project, which is an ETH project? I know that was the first actual generative project that you helped work with. Do you want to talk about what you learned from that?
Yeah. So Tablelands came to Offalos as like a client job, I think in January-ish. And Colin and Tablelands founder Sander, I think they were friends from before, during their careers. And that's how Tableland came about. And what did I learn? Yeah, so before that, I've only been doing one-of-ones, and all I knew about generative projects was like Bored Ape, Yacht Club, and CryptoPunk. I think those were the only. Oh, and Doodles and like Cool Cats, like the bigger PFP projects. Yeah. Those were the only things that I knew, and I've never done one. So when they came to us, we just spent like an entire day or two just YouTubing and Googling how to make a generative NFT project. And that's literally how we started. And then we just started doing a bunch of random testings, and they look a lot like the PopHeadz you see, just like really rudimentary drawings and trying to figure out how to set up the files, how to set up layers, things like that. And at first, we were gonna do humans, but then we also experimented with like what a landscape PFP would look like, but that didn't happen. And ultimately, they settled on like vehicles, and vehicles are an entire different problem to solve. Because
solve. I guess Solana.
to solve. Yeah, because they are a lot more complex than humans, and we need to figure out how to do them in perspective, but not in 3D, like in a 2D way. So I think we have about 1, 2, 3, 4 artists worked on it, and maybe 3 at any given time, because some people had to hop on and hop off because it was a really long project. And it was probably the most intense job that I've ever worked on. If I had to describe it, I would describe it as kind of like sprinting a marathon for like 2.5, 3 months. Because there's like a deadline, and the amount of assets that we had to create was just a lot. But yeah, I learned a lot. And there are a lot of things that I learned from Tableland that carries over to PopHeadz that saved us a lot of that experimenting time. Like trying to figure out, okay, we need the wheels to match, and for PopHeadz it's like we need the headsets to match, but they're in perspective, so then we'll need the devs to like do some mix and matching so things match up the way they should. Just things like that. And then things like the hair and the hat, a lot of them need to be built in because some hats don't fit with certain hair shapes. And then there's things like the skin tone, different skin tones working differently with a different eyebrow or like hair color. So a lot of those, they're like problem solving and just figuring things out along the way.
Oh yeah,
And
I think you're right. I think probably some of the work that you did for Tablelands first, and maybe the timing actually really helped that we didn't make
yeah, for sure.
A full collection until you had experience with Tablelands. Helped. If people don't know, Joice is actually like, she's like the, I don't want to say what's the right word for it. She's like the drill commander for the art team. She's like, okay,
Oh my
Tony, we
gosh.
have to do this by this date. Let's make sure the art is like XYZ. I think honestly, I think the whole team appreciates that because sometimes we're lost. For me especially, I don't know anything about art. I just know I like things that look good. So it's hard for me to understand. Like obviously, like there's the meme. It's like, oh, just Fiverr artists can spin up stuff so fast, right? It's just use the layering thing. But in order to make it look good and like have the same quality, it is a lot of thinking and work, and I don't think people understand that it's actually a little difficult.
Yeah, if I hadn't had worked on Tablelands, I don't think I would be able to be as decisive with PopHeadz, because on Tablelands, so I can't math. So I relied on our art director and our other team member Amy heavily for those math things. And our art director Yuki, he's like a freaking, I don't know, man. He's just on another level with his brain power. So while working on Tablelands, we had to come up with, okay, how we have like how many, like 6 or 8 types of vehicles that we had to figure out, and every one of them needed a different grid. And while Amy and I were trying to figure it out, we're like, yeah, we feel like it should work this way, but then we don't know exactly how. So then they eventually brought on Yuki and told him exactly what we needed, and this is what Joice and Amy have been experimenting, but something's not working. And in like a week or something, he just made these beautifully structured grids for each of the vehicle categories that that just blew my mind, and I learned a lot from that. So it's like, okay, we need a really rigid grid system and have very specific boundaries and where things attach, but then within those boundaries, everybody is free to use their imagination to draw out different kinds of vehicles. It's also a very interesting exercise because everyone is given the same grid, but everybody approaches the problem very differently. Like, so there's 4 of us that drew the vehicles, but then nobody drew the same things, which is very interesting to see how like the different team members solve their problems. So yeah, so I apply that with PopHeadz. Um, so had Daniel like provide a basic head and just kind of make that into a grid and make some boundaries. Be like, here, this is what we have to follow. And obviously for PopHeadz, the grid doesn't have to be as rigid because the base is a human head, and we can do a lot more flexible things with it than vehicles. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of like obviously the creative process and obviously interpreting things a different way. For PopHeadz, obviously Daniel was the original artist. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the process of you having to kind of emulate his art style and what you've been having to do for that?
Honestly, it's been very humbling learning from Daniel. And from the beginning, it was, yeah, in the very beginning, it was a lot of just taking Daniel's one of one pieces and uh, literally like taking it apart and figuring out how things could work in a layering system. And beyond that, it was learning the style. So at my job at Oddfellows, we the designers, the artists, we have to be really flexible in terms of the different styles because all the client jobs, they come in and they require different things, and a lot of times that requires different styles to solve the problem with. So we have to be very flexible. And so personally, I kind of look like different art styles as like different tools in a box you take out to solve problems. Does that make sense? So yeah, so you have the fundamentals like perspective, composition, and color, and those are at the base. And I think once you have like a pretty solid-ish understanding of those, beyond that, like the treatment, like whether it's line, shape, painterly, graphic, the different kinds of style is just tools that you pick and choose. And some are easier to emulate than the other, and some are harder. And Daniel's style, man, it's not easy. it So yeah, at first I just asked Daniel like, hey, yeah, could you walk me through your thought process and how you do your one of one heads? And he was just like, yeah, I just draw it and then paint everything on one layer.
Yeah, just how do you draw a human head? Draw the circle and then draw everything else.
Yeah, and it is so, how to describe it? It is so like simple. So have you heard that saying where plain toast or plain breads are harder to make than the fancy ones because it's so simple, it's hard to do perfectly?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so I like to think of Daniel's style as a plain toast that's hard to do. Because there's no a lot of effects or a lot of like bling bling to add to it, but the base of it, like the shape design, the color, the perspective, everything is just so on point. So he does it so simply, and it just is so like like delicious to the eye. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And there's
Yeah.
not much you can hide, right? He just uses a plain white background.
Yeah, exactly. So it is very simple, and every shape and every stroke he does count. So it's been a process for me to learn. At first I'm like, yeah, I can do that, no problem. But very quickly, like the first, I think 2 weeks, I was just drawing it and I got really, really frustrated. I'm like, God damn it, Daniel, just let me borrow your brain.
You say that a lot during your art streams. Let me borrow
Oh
Daniel's
my
brain.
gosh,
How do
yeah.
you do this?
Let me
The
just
coloring
borrow
especially.
Daniel.
I think the
Yeah.
coloring is the hard part for sure.
No, the sketching was definitely harder.
Okay, well, invalidate my opinion.
I mean, both are hard, but remember that week I just did a bunch of random sketches. There's like the Tengu, the the doggos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the time when I did it, I'm like, yeah, these are the shit. They look so freaking cool, you know. And
No,
then
yeah, I agreed with you. I was there. I was there with you.
yeah, and when I showed to Daniel, he had like an entire paragraph of feedback, and I was like, holy shit, how can I not see that? And after he pointed it out, I went back to look at the sketches, and to I just instantly saw it. Like I put my sketches next to his, and I'm like, holy shit, these are so bad. And but thankfully Daniel has been like super super patient with me, just like doing drawovers and explaining how to do things, and oh, it's been a journey. And but at one point I just needed to move forward because we had so much work to do. And so we've been sketching out traits for the last month and a half, I would say, maybe more. And and we are at the point that we're coloring now. But so how I worked, I just went down the categories. So I worked on one category. Once that's done, I move on to the next. So with each category that I worked on, I was getting more and more comfortable with how how I think Daniel would do, but I don't know if that's how he would do. Just try to emulate his style, and a lot of it is also like the muscle memory, because different people have different ways of drawing shapes, and it took me a really long time to get used to it, and I think I might have found the the key, which is really big, simple, broad strokes that you have to draw from your shoulders. And yeah, it just took a long time. And now that I'm coloring, I actually went back and redid a lot of the sketches because my eyes also are a little bit more fine-tuned now that I can spot more of the problems. I was just gonna say ultimately I'm not Daniel, so probably can't do it perfectly, but I hope I'm still like improving every day.
Yeah, I think you've been doing a good job. I think people have been seeing the progress and are really hyped for it and see the effort, especially in your art streams that you've been doing a lot here in the PopHeadz Discord. Now that we're in the coloring phase,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to keep you any longer since the conversation has actually been running for over an hour. I think.
Oh shit.
Um, but yeah, uh, what would you like as kind of some parting thoughts, right? So you're doing these art streams, you're helping to build out the PopHeadz community here. What do you want to see come out of the project?
Personally, I just want to see really good art and people loving the art. I guess that's
Okay,
it for
yeah,
me. Yeah.
there you go. Buy PopHeadz for the art. Let's go.
Let's
All
go.
right, yeah.
And that's it. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of this interview with Joyce, and I will see you all next week.